Go ahead, Annie.
All right, so good morning, namaste, and welcome to our weekly wellness support session through Zoom in these days of COVID. And of course, this is part of the wellness program which was started under the auspices of India Community Center. As most of you are aware, our mission is educate, inspire, and empower. So our goal is to provide as much information as we can to all of our participants and to help move people from living their lives on a reactive model of health and wellness to one that is proactive. Take this wealth of information, institute the changes that would be beneficial to one, and then really live a sort of a well-rounded, healthy lifestyle. In terms of format, we did make some changes in the last couple of weeks. So every other Saturday we have a speaker, and you're going to hear from somebody who's going to bring a wealth of information and experiences and knowledge, and we're going to leave empowered in this on this particular topic for today. And then the next Saturday is going to be more of sharing our experiences. So a little bit more personal in that sense. So that's the format that we are using. And we typically start our programs with some very soulful music, which helps ground us and prepare us for this hour of conversation and learning. And for that, I'm going to invite Jesse Sheehan. And very briefly, Jesse is a professional jazz musician based in Berkeley, California. And he studied music in India for 4 years under the guidance of Pandit Nayan Ghosh and other masters. And Jesse comes to us actually not from Berkeley today, but from Tahoe. So Jesse, it's all yours.
Hi, everybody. I was going to try to do a little rendition of Rag Durga for you, which is basically a mode of the Western pentatonic scale, starting on a different note. The pentatonic scale gives, actually, you can start on any note and make it sa of a pentatonic scale, and you'll get all these beautiful different ragas, if that makes any sense. Anyways, here we go.
That was beautiful, Jesse, as always, and it gets us exactly in that place where we want to be. It was
Great.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. So again, as all our participants are aware, we do bring you experts from different fields every other Saturday with the new format. And our concept of wellness is, it's really beyond just physical health, because when you talk about wellness, you're talking about a much more holistic approach to health. And wellness includes different aspects of health, if you want to, all the way from physical, emotional, intellectual, occupational, social, spiritual. And under the occupational prong of wellness, of course, we have to take care of our financial health also. And that's basically going to be our focus for today. Now, in my capacity as legal advisor to the program, I do want to put out this disclaimer that while the speakers that we bring to you are obviously extremely successful and knowledgeable, uh, it is important to point out that because this is a group setting, and any feedback or advice that or thoughts that they're sharing with us doesn't really take into account your personal situation. So if you are acting on that advice, you either should be comfortable and confident that it does apply to your specific life situation, or you should seek out expert guidance. And on that note, I will now introduce our program coordinator, moderator, and that is Mr. Dinesh Chandra. Dinesh, as most of you know, is a transformational change management guru, as he is referred to, both for personal and professional change. And he has done work with international companies and led teams pretty much across the world. And I think some of the things that he's most proud of is the work that he has done with the blessing and guidance of His Holiness Dalai Lama, which actually led him to write a book called What is True Wealth. And I get a dose of his wisdom pretty much 24/7, considering he's also my better half. But on that note, I will give you Dinesh Chandra.
Thank you, Annie, and welcome all again. I'm really excited today. Some of my friends whom I have known for a long time are here on the call. Anil Bhandari and I landed together in US in just around 1969. And Dr. Bal Gupta is my professional golfer friend. And he was my professor as well. And Prakash Ambegaonkar joining us from Orlando. Dr. Prakash Ambegaonkar is another entrepreneur. So today we have some wonderful audience. And on top of that, we have an amazing guest speaker today, Ajit Devda. Ajit and I actually met about a year and a half ago. I was having some issues, and Naren Bakshi, who is the co-founder of this, along with Dr. Pankaj Vij and Som, he introduced me to Ajit. And Ajit gave me some advice, and that really worked. So thank you, Ajit, for that. And then when I was getting ready to invite a guest speaker for financial wellness, which is part of the occupational wellness, as you all know, then Ajit, at that time, I got to know a little more about him. And what I realized that not only he is a successful entrepreneur, and he has done very well, he also is a health hero. And rather than dwelling on it myself, I turn to Ajit to share his amazing story, and then we'll get into his financial management, financial planning wisdom. And on top of that, we have the last half an hour for all of you to share your wisdom. And we have some wonderful financial advice, planner, and thinkers today. And welcome Vibhasana as well, and Jinendra, my friend from a long time. So a lot of people here will have a wonderful conversation today. So with that, Ajit.
Thanks, Dinesh. Thanks, Annie, for inviting me. I appreciate it. And good morning to everybody on the call today. A quick background about myself. I'm originally from Jodhpur, Rajasthan, but grew up in Chennai. I come from though my forefathers supposedly were extremely well off, very rich, I suppose, at one time, but over a period of time, for many reasons, I grew up in a very, very, I would say, lower middle class family in a home that was barely, I would say, 600 or 700 square feet, and it was 7 siblings, my mom and dad. So 9 people living in a small home of maybe 600, 700 square feet, right? And it was very, what do you call, uh, I always felt very difficult looking at my parents. Putting food on the table was very, very hard, etc., etc., right? So early on in life, I sort of made a decision. I have to do something that I can help my family, right? So most of my early years went off in that thought. I was lucky enough, by the way, to get into IIT Madras. I'm a graduate of IIT Madras 1980 batch. And I knew in those days, in the 70s and 80s, making money in India was not easy. As you guys know, India has changed a lot since then. So I said, you know what, I, I have to come to America somehow. Managed to get a scholarship for my master's. Did my computer science, and I found out what major I should take that would be easiest to get a job in the US once I graduate. And I happened to have a conversation with my uncle who was in the US that time. He said, you know, beta, do computer science. So I came, did my master's in computer science, lucked out getting into Intel, spent 5 years at Intel building up basic talent in engineering, management, etc., etc. But I really didn't really want to work for anybody, you know, because I knew things have changed now, by the way, but those days making money as an employee was rather difficult, right? It would take you 30 years or 40 years to generate a comfortable living. So I said, you know what? I got to quit and start my own company. So I left my very comfortable position at Intel in 87. And since then, I've done about 5 startups. And I again have to thank God for the luck I've had. One of the startups went IPO, the other 4 got acquired. Net, I did very well financially, you know, but I paid a heavy price because of that financial success. This is now late 98, 99, and my health was not that great. I was about 200 pounds. I don't know if you can see me now in the video. At that time, I was 200 pounds, could barely stand for a few minutes, constantly was looking for a chair to sit down, had all kinds of back issues, leg issues, etc. I said, you know what, I made enough money, now I need to focus on my health. So 98, 99, I was talking to some friends and he said, you know, there's this yoga teacher coming in, maybe you should start yoga, you know. So I started yoga in 2000 and I started liking it, you know, and people saying, man, you're looking good. You know, what have you been doing? So I said, I've been doing yoga. So, you know, I started learning how to take care of myself. And one of the things that my doctor pointed out to me, he says, Ajit, if you want to be physically fit, you cannot afford to be 200,000 pounds. You need to sort of come down to your BMI level. And I checked what my BMI needs to be in the, what they call in the nice group, right? And it had to be in the 150 to 160. So I'm glad to report that my weight today is about 159. I'm currently not on any medication. I don't have any health issues. I don't have any fitness issues. I sleep like a baby, 7 to 8 hours a day. I wake up thinking, you know, life is really great. So I've spent a lot of time figuring out what type of a lifestyle I need to have. On one hand, you want to be intellectually challenged. On the other hand, you need to have the health and fitness to enjoy everything else in life, right? You want to enjoy travel, you want to enjoy your family, you want to enjoy, what do you want to enjoy? Without health and fitness, you really can't do any of it unless you, no matter how much money you have, right? So I decided very consciously to make health and fitness my priority sometime in the early 2000 time frame. And for the last 20 years, I make it a point that I work out 1 hour in the morning every day. So I do a mix of yoga, pranayam, running up Mission Peak, various forms of back stretches, etc., right? I make it a point to do that. Also, when it comes to my diet, I eat everything, by the way, I drink everything, but I'm very conscious about the quality of food I take in, right? I make sure the food has enough nutrition, has enough protein, very low carbs, etc., etc. So overall, you know, I'm very glad the change I made for myself. And the thing that's very heartening for me is whenever somebody meets me, I get this. I'm not trying to boast or anything, but I'm just trying to make a point. People come and say, "Man, Ajit, you're looking so fit. How do you do it?" And that sort of motivates me to continue on. And I've been, I suppose, helpful to quite a few people making their own changes, right? So now I'm surrounded by people who are, you know, all health conscious. We have a group of about 40 people that have sort of joined me over a period of 15, 20 years, and we do Mission Peak once a week, right? I can literally run up Mission Peak today. And that's my long story. Now, one more point I do want to make out, because it's a financial wellness session. I was taking a lot of risk being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, guys. If you know, you guys only hear about the success stories and you get to meet people who are successful. But for every success story, there are about many hundreds of people who don't make it. So entrepreneurship is very hard, very difficult. The lucky few make it. So I knew I was taking a lot of risk in what I was doing. And the last thing I wanted to do was to make sure my retirement was not at risk, right? So over a period of time, like Dinesh pointed out earlier on, I put away enough money over a period of time. I had enough life insurance, had enough annuities, etc., 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 that when I knew my time for retirement came along, I would not have any cash flow issues, right? So today I'm very comfortably, I won't say retired. I suppose I'll never retire. I'm still on the board of about half a dozen companies. I do a fair amount of angel investments, but that's just to keep myself intellectually challenged. So I focused a lot of my energy over the years to make sure I never have a cash flow problem, right? So today I would say you know, cash flow to different people is different. It could mean different things. To me and my wife, we decided one day to sit down and say, hey, when we retire, how much money do we really need to live a comfortable life? And we came up with a number, and that number is going to be different for different people, right? And we made sure we generate enough cash every month to meet that lifestyle requirement. And I'm very happy we did that, right? Another thing I made sure is, you know, technology in the Valley, and I'm sure you guys know a lot of people who do very well in their career and then come around 50, in their early 50s, if they get laid off. And I know a lot of my friends who have gone through that. Getting a job, no matter how smart you are, is very difficult, right? Unless you're already in the system, getting into the system again is very, very hard. So another thing I've been trying to tell people is always have one more skill set beyond the skill set on which you're making money, just in case you need to fall back to make a living, right? So you know, I've tried to do that a little bit as well. Last but not the least, we live in a beautiful home. I have to say that we are very lucky compared to the 500 square foot home. I grew up in Chennai. Today I live in a 6,000 square foot, quote unquote, mini palace, if you may. But we've been very conscious to only buy things that we need, not what we want, right? There are a lot of stuff we want. I live in a very expensive community, Mission Hills, as you guys know. Some of you may know, in Fremont. But I can tell you, I'm probably the only Mission Hills resident who owns only one car. We have only one car because we realize we don't need two cars. Why do we need two cars? Make the insurance payment, this payment, that payment. We live with one car. Life is working out great, and that's my story. I'll be glad to discuss it to any depth you guys want, because my goal is to help as many people as I can be comfortable in life. So what I found is, just as a summary, the way I measure wellness is how good a sleep you get. If you don't get good sleep, no matter how much money you have, something is wrong. Something is missing. Either money is missing, or health is missing, or fitness is missing. I measure by that, and I can tell you, I sleep like a dog for 7 to 8 hours every night, right? So.
Thank you so much, Ajit, for sharing your amazing story in such an authentic manner. I really appreciate that. Now, let's go back to the couple of key things you have summarized. And I'm also asking all the other participants to get ready with my favorite question, which also I asked Ajit this question about what advice would you give to your children or your grandchildren? So, that kind of the whole gamut. So as the rest of you are preparing for it, I'm just going to get deeper into a little bit with Ajit. You talked about you emphasized actually the need for cash flow as opposed to acquiring assets. If you have somebody who is just starting their career, 30 or 35 years old, and they are just beginning to build, how would you guide them, or what suggestion would you give them to how they can create cash flow, and why should they pay attention to cash flow? What are some of the problems they can get into as opposed to creating an asset?
So, I give this advice. I have two boys. The older one is 35 years old. He's married very comfortably. My younger one is 30 years old. He's a venture capitalist at Battery Ventures. So both the kids are doing extremely well. Financially, they're doing very well. Thank God for it. But like I tell them, the process of creating wealth, with the exception of a few people, right, has a finite time period, and that typically time period is from your mid-20s to, let's say, if you're lucky, mid-50s, right? So you have a 30-year time horizon, and no matter how good you are, there's a chance that you could what do you call, the stream of cash that you're able to earn may disappear like a cliff, right? So I tell my kids, and I tell everybody, the only way to guarantee the lifestyle you can enjoy over a period of time is cash flow, right? You could have $1 billion in the bank, like you could own the Jodhpur Palace, but if it doesn't have cash flow, there's not much the Maharaja of Jodhpur can do, Nobody's going to buy that palace from him. So without cash flow, you're sort of dead, right? Part of the reason Jodhpur of Maharaja has leased the hotel to Oberoi, that's generating him the cash flow, right? So I tell my kids, every investment you make has to have a cash flow thinking. So if you're going to be investing in stocks, make sure it is generating dividends, right? Don't just look for growth. If you're going to be investing in real estate, make sure it is cash flow positive. If you're going to be investing in startups, make sure that startup is generating, it's not just a concept, but it's actually generating customers and revenue, so your risk is sort of minimized, right? So my emphasis to my kids has always been cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, and to put off as much as they can afford, right? And different people can afford different percentages of the income they make, to sort of generating this cash flow for the long term, right? So my kids, as an example, put a maximum amount of money allowed into their 401k. I think it's like $16,000 or $17,000 a year. I forget what the amount is. They're both invested in real estate. That's generating some for them some rental income. I'm sure they do a lot of stupid stuff because no kid listens to everything your parents tell you. But a lot of their investments are in stocks that generate dividends, right? And the interesting thing about dividend-bearing stocks, as some of you might know, they're typically large companies, and the risk associated with them crashing or going down get minimized as well, you know. And that's my advice to a lot of people.
All right. Thank you, Ajit. Now we are getting to the part of our program where we want all our participants to ask questions or share their own wisdom. We have some wonderful, knowledgeable people in this audience today among the participants. So I invite you to please share your wisdom, especially in this Corona times. And we are more interested in the fundamentals, the common denominator, common denominators. What is it, and again, what advice would you give to your children, grandchildren, or your friends what to do? So with that, I would invite anyone who would like to share their wisdom or ask a question. Please go ahead.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead, Naren.
So first of all, Ajit, so nice to hear you all the way from Jaipur.
Yeah, nice to hear you too, Naren.
So congratulations to all of you, and for you to come in and give this wisdom is great. So one question I should ask, you mentioned quite a bit about cash flow, but you also know, you've been a VC, that there are times when cash is not the king. It is the acquisition of customers, and you lose money, and because there's an opportunity much bigger.
Right.
How do you differentiate between those two?
So I think we are talking about two different cash flow, Naren. I'm talking about personal cash flow compared to business cash flow, right?
Yes.
For a business, you're right. At least the startups I've done about 5 startups. Like I said earlier on, the focus has always been acquire customers, right?
Absolutely.
And if you have to spend money to acquire customers, as long as you have the money in the bank, as long as you have the balance sheet, I suppose, to spend, you need to spend to acquire customers, right? That's different. Now I'm talking about what we are talking about at this session, Naren, is personal cash flow, right? Independent of what happens to my business, whether my startup, whether it goes up or down, I got to make sure my wife and my kids never suffer, right? That's the primary goal. And I believe that primary goal can only be achieved if you make sure personal cash flow is not impacted. And that's what I've tried to do in my life, right? I'm not saying it's easy. Requires a lot of sacrifice from you and the rest of your family. Because everybody has to cut down, right? Your wife has to cut down, your kids have to cut down, you have to cut down to create that investment, to create that cash flow, right? So it's a discussion you have with your wife and your kids. And also your extended family, right? When you come to the US, as some of you know, most of us have come from quote unquote middle class or lower middle class families. Those extended family have a lot of expectation from you, right? Mera beta America gaya, wo paisa bhejega, you know, you'll take care of us. So those challenges you have to manage, I suppose, right? A lot of people try to hide it or try to show off. They have more money than they actually do, and they get into trouble. It's been my observation, right? Rather than having an honest conversation with your family and extended family, they try to hide it or show off that they can afford it when they actually cannot, and that's a problem.
You are absolutely right. So right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit, and thank you, Naren. I want to again emphasize on this program. This program is not for a financial advice, because then you need to go back to your financial advisor. And there are some of the financial advisors are here also in this program. Investment bankers are here, and a lot of people are very, very knowledgeable. But in this program, what we are trying to really focus on your relationship with money. For example, what advice would you give to children and your grandchildren? Again, like for example, the only advice I gave to my children, and I followed myself, thanks to my friends who told me that, is to try to save. Save at least 10%. And the second thing I knew is to maximize your 401k. Because, that's like Anil used to tell me, every dollar you put, you get 100% return. What better return can you get? And of course, my friend Bal advised me to always use Roth if you can for all your children. So these are some of the basic fundamental stuff, which is good sound planning. So I want to focus more on what would be your relationship with money and what are some basic fundamental principles you should follow and you have followed hopefully, and what advice would you give to your children, grandchildren? So Bal, are you ready to speak up?
Okay. Uh, Instead of giving advice, I'll just tell you a few stories. Uh, when my son, his name is Govin, and he was like going to high school, and he was very outgoing and very extrovert. And he wanted to buy a fast car, and he wanted to do this, and he thought I was doing so well, I can do all those things. So one day I held him down and I said, listen, Govin, if I want to ruin your life, I'll give you $1 million today. I guarantee that your entire life is ruined because you will get into fast car, fast girls, and not pay any attention to education. And I got it sort of down for him to understand that why I cannot give him lots of money. And that worked out well for me, partly luck, partly whatever. And he is a world leader now for Ernst & Young for mergers and acquisitions. So he took that and he got into finances, and that's my story with my older son. My younger son, all these stories have some kind of pipeline which you can understand. What I did for him is I started to put his money. There is something called minor Roth IRA. You can put money in a Roth IRA of a child who you will be the guardian. But these monies were not small. Like if he cut a grass, I gave him like $30. It has to be, I was paying my neighbor's son. I said, I'll pay you same thing, but I'm paying my neighbor's son. And I started putting that money into his Roth IRA called Minor's Roth IRA, where he is the owner of that Roth IRA and I'm the guardian. And what you have to watch that you don't do something illegal. Like once you get hooked to it, you can start putting money for like for birthday present or something. It has to be actual work. If your son or daughter is doing some babysitting or walking the dog, you get a check from whoever you're doing and you can put that money. So I started, like when I was all done with him, I had like a $3,000 in his account, and today that 3,000 has become 30,000. So that's the power of compounding. I invested all of it in S&P 500, and it's amazing power that human brain does not comprehend what is recurring kind of investment, and how quickly it grows is amazing. It just boils your mind. You have to actually put numbers to the paper to see how a small amount of money. You could also invest in, like when your grandchild is born or something, you could invest like a 1 or 2 or 3 or 5. There is no limit on putting limit for your child as long as custodial account. And that couple $1,000, $2,000 will become $1 million when he retires. So, I mean, there are power of compounding that defies brain. So those are the story of my two sons. My daughter, who I sent to a medical college in Pittsburgh, very conscientious, and like an Indian parent, I wanted to pay off for all their education. Going to medical was pretty expensive. Like at that time, the tuition was like $80,000 a year or something. And there's something called tough love. And so I said, well, I got you fully paid for your bachelor's education, pre-med. Now for med, I like you to pay half by taking a student loan. And so when she ended up with it, she had some amount of debt. And in America, what they call some skin in the game. So she's so happy, and she's a doctor. So once she graduated, it was easy for her to pay it off. My youngest daughter named Monica, and very, very brilliant girl. And when, as an Indian parent, we always talk about getting married. So she wanted to get married at age of 16, 17, something like that. I said, listen, you have to get a degree, bachelor's degree as a minimum in a field that you can get a job easily before you can get married. She said, I'll just marry a rich person, somebody from Harvard who can make millions of dollars. I said, no matter what you say, you have to get a degree. And which is what she did. She got a degree in finance, and she did marry a guy from Harvard who is multi-millionaire now. But those are some of the things you do as a tough love. I can answer any question anybody wants, but because of limitation of time and so many participants, I think that's my contribution.
Thank you
But
so
I can
much.
answer any question.
Dinesh,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Can I just offer some words to everybody?
Absolutely, Anil. Go ahead.
See, I've been in this business for the last 40 years, and I've seen the markets go up and markets go down, and the families there's been a tremendous wealth generation in families and a lot of wealth destruction in the families. So the first thing I think we should educate there are two important things that one should educate their kids. One is, of course, as Ajit mentioned, the cash flow, but more important than that is leverage. We should make sure that they understand that leverage is a double-edged sword. It works great when times are good, but when times are bad, it can be devastating. So I am always against leverage. And the leverage one can take in business or in personal conditions should be the amount of money that one can write in case of dire need, that the markets collapse and you don't have to sell and make desperate sales. So you can basically write a check and cover that debt. All you're doing is using the leverage, using the interest rates in your favor, but not misusing it and borrowing too much and then getting destroyed. That's number one advice I give to my kids. So, and I have zero leverage. And I have no mortgage, no leverage, which is foolish because being in the financial services business, I should deploy that and make more money. But that is one thing. Again, everybody has their own risk tolerance. And that is the first thing I preach to all my friends, kids, and clients, that I do not advocate leverage. Second, there's no fast money to be made in the marketplace. You can be lucky and you can make it once in a while. Commodities, futures, currencies are only for the sophisticated people. And when one gets carried away that one can make that money because you're using leverage, it can also be destroying. And it can create a lot of wealth destruction. And I've seen it over the years, wealth being destroyed. Second thing is, if one wants to be in the market, one has to basically use their own risk tolerance. I can be a 70-year-old and have a high risk tolerance, so I can be all in equities. I can be a 30-year-old, I have zero risk tolerance, I want to be all in bonds. So it all depends on each one's aptitude for risk tolerance. Last thing is, again, 401k, as both Ajit and Bal mentioned, is a fantastic tool. There's a 100% return on the matching program. One should always guide their kids that put in at least that much, if not more. And if you more, then it's a forced savings, which is tax deferred. Again, you're getting the benefit on the compounding. Last thing is, one should be not timing the markets, but have the time in the markets. In other words, invest as much as you can afford to invest. Don't overextend and stay in the market. Don't try to play the trading game, because the wealth generation is really made by holding on to good quality stocks, good investing in good blue chips and holding them long term. And that has been the philosophy of Warren Buffett, who is over 80 years old. He has no leverage and he invests in blue chips, and that's how he has made his wealth generation. And that's the principle I advocate, I follow, and I give to my kids. Thank you very much.
Hello,
I
Annie.
really
Can I
enjoyed-
ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Annie, are you taking over Dinesh's role? Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so is others also able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Prakash. Go ahead.
Okay. I have a few questions to ask all the speakers, ask whoever wants to ask. Is many people ask me, do you use money managers or do you invest yourself? You can research and pick stocks and, so I want to know, what have you found overall good approach to hire other people to do it, because they cost a lot of money and they do certain things. And so even though I have 4 money managers and banks to take care of it, sometimes they screw up things. The second thing is, what do you think is the real key advice in terms of investing? Like what I have done my research and reading and being in this for 20, 30 years, that the most important factor in success in your investment is the asset ratio. And that asset ratio is very difficult to manage, as you know, depends upon your age, your income, all that. So, but those are the 2 things I want to get some feedback from whoever.
May I answer that question? May I answer that question?
Oh, anyone is fine.
I will answer that question, both the questions for you. Money managers, advisors are good if you are incapable or you do not have the time to do the research. It's like going to a doctor. You're unwell, you can just take some medicines at home, or you're unwell, you go to just a family practitioner, or if you're really unwell, you go to a specialist. What's the point in paying a specialist when you can go to a primary physician and pay much less, or just save money? So here, if you're looking for expert advice and somebody is established advisor, he will always be and has the fiduciary interest, not looking at fees to make from you, but basically trying to see how he can help. And as your assets grow, his fees can grow. So if your assets decline, his fees go down. So he's basically on the same page as you. Those are the type of advisors that you want. Not the people who are based on transaction based, not the people who are based on commission based, driven by commissions and transactions. That's part number 1. The second question you had was, remind me, the second part you had was, I forget.
Asset ratio.
Asset ratio. That is, again, depends on the risk tolerance level of each individual. As I mentioned earlier, the asset ratio, whether you want to be all in equities, whether you want to be all in bonds or a mixture of assets and bonds, there's been always a traditional rule that divide that by, take your age, subtract that from 100, and that's the amount of equity to bond ratio. However, times have changed. And if you look at 20 years ago or 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, we all used to look at the traditional yardsticks, which were the price earnings multiples, the PEG ratios. And we said, okay, if the price earnings multiple is very high, we don't want to be buying that stock because that's too high a price stock. Now, if you look at it, it's not only in the old companies, traditional companies, you look at the price earnings multiples and the PEG ratios, but now in the new age companies, you're looking at growth rates. Now, somebody can say, well, it's like the eyeballs in the 2000. I disagree with that. It basically depends on the companies that you're looking at and what the growth rates are. And again, as I keep repeating, I only invest in the top blue chips, best of breeds, best of breed disruptors. And that's basically been the theme. So the asset ratio is a comfort level of each individual investor. You cannot have a perfect ratio that should be 60-40, 70-30, or 80-90, or whatever, 80-20. So I think to answer your question, 1, I think having a good advisor, money manager helps, and will always, again, if the interests are aligned with your interests. And second, the asset ratio is completely an individual. But the key part I keep harping is do not use leverage.
Can I add?
Thank you. Yeah, Ajit, please go ahead.
So, this is, I find a lot of people, and I'm talking about technology people, right? I can relate to technology people because that's my background. Technology people are generally very smart when it comes to their work, right? Engineering, but very, very few of these people are financially savvy. I can't claim to be financially savvy myself, to be honest with you, right? And a lot of them think just because they are good engineers or good doctors, they're also good financial planners. And I believe that's a disaster, right? So I think it's very important for each individual to understand their weakness. And you have to be honest to yourself, right? Hey, I'm a good doctor, I'm a good engineer, I'm really not good managing money. Let me go get a financial planner. That's one part, right? The second part I find is the people who are good at financial planning, there are exceptions, they want to manage all their money. Nothing wrong with it. But one piece they miss out, and I have this argument with my older brother who's a very smart guy. He's another IIT graduate, engineer, has made a lot of money in the market, trading, this, that, all of that stuff, right? And I asked him a very basic question, which he has no answer for. His name is Arun, by the way. I said, Arun, what happens to your wife when you pass away? And you will pass away sooner or later, and you're left with wife who's predominantly been a housewife. Will she be able to manage to the level you're managing and generate the growth to the level you're generating and create the cash flow to the level you're creating? And he does not have an answer. I think it's very important to ask yourself, A, if I am gone, I think the kids are taken care of because they're all educated and they'll take care of themselves. I'm not concerned about them. Can your wife do it on her own? My experience talking to Indians, I'm talking about specifically to Indians, and I'm not trying to be a male chauvinist pig here. I'm just trying to be honest. 99% of our women are not capable of managing money to generate in the cash flow that they might need to maintain the lifestyle you left for them when you left, and I believe that's a very important component. And
can we quote you on this and put it in the newspaper?
Because I tell my brothers, I tell my wife, I tell my in-laws, I tell everybody. Because it's just, you can see the data in front of you, right? The data is right in front of you. And ignoring that, I believe, is foolish. That's my opinion.
But again, Ajit, on that count, if you're preparing your retirement, you should not be looking at the retirement. If let's say you are 70 and your wife is 60, and you say that, okay, my retirement age, I'm 70, so I need to have in my retirement account for about 20 years or 25 years. But you should be really looking at the age of your wife, because most of us will demise before our wives. Our wives will live longer.
Agreed.
So if we prepare for that, and we prepare the cash flow based on their lives, based on their age groups, I think you're doing a service to them. And at the last thing, if the wife is not savvy enough to basically handle the investments, either she should get some advisor who will handle it for her, or she basically just goes into only dividend and income bearing investments where she gets a regular income on a monthly basis. And you can devise a portfolio of blue chip stocks where you get monthly income from the blue chips. And that can be a sustainer for the wife in the long run.
Yeah, I think as long as you're willing to do that and you have done that, I agree with you. But I do know a lot of people, my brother being one of them, who does not believe in a financial planner. And I'm scared for my bhabhi, right? At this point in time. If you've taken care of the cash, which is what I said earlier on, if you've taken care of the cash flow for you and your wife, up until both of us pass away, I suppose, that's fine. Then everything is taken care of.
Let me join you guys.
Hey, well, thank you. Go ahead, MS.
Yeah, I'd like to join you on this particular point. First of all, I'm actually in the situation where I'm an older guy compared to my wife and that type of thing. And also with my kids, the challenge is we should try to bring them into the fold and educate them along with us as we're making financial decisions and why we're doing certain things and investments along the way so they become educated. Because one of the big problems, both in the educational system here in the United States at least, is the kids are not trained or not educated financially. They don't understand money. They don't understand how to, what does it mean and how is it really important? Because the definition of wealth is a lot in between your two ears in terms of how you define what it is. And once you get to a point of where you have enough and you define that, the question is how do you sustain that to a point where you're comfortable in your life as you want to live it. So with my wife, for example, I'm going through the investments and we have a conservative portfolio and then we have a more aggressive risk-on portfolio, which we have. And as I'm going through those decisions, I go through this, and I also talk about this with my kids and friends sometimes, to say, okay, here's what we think is happening with this company, and we share our insights, and we get more insights back from them. So it's educating and also realizing. I mean, you're all right in that you can't take it with you. So what my obligation is to try to position them for success and to win in this game of life, and which is out there. And part of it is the financial side of it as well.
Well, I have to respond to that you and me may be fortunate that we have kids who are interested in looking at the finances. I find a lot of my friends' kids, they have no interest in finance. They don't want to understand finance. They don't want to be involved with finance. So in those cases, and let's say your wife is very good in finance, then obviously she can handle it. But most of the wives are not. And most of the husbands sometimes are not. So in those cases, you need somebody you can trust and who can advise you, who doesn't have the fees or the commissions, but really your interest at heart. You will need somebody like that. And if your kids are well versed and they are in tune, absolutely, you're absolutely right. Then of course they can help your wife or manage the generational fortunes that you have generated.
It's really interesting that the culture basically is really good on the spend side of money. In terms of, here's how you want to spend your money, and you define yourself by the things that you own, or what size of house you have, or what type of jewelry you're wearing. And they're not really educating them on the other side of it, which is the acquisition of wealth or money and that type of thing. And therefore, it's not surprising that it's not really interesting to people to talk about finances and economics, because it's not sexy, as opposed to things which are more meaningful for the long term. So you're right on that. And so either you have a professional advisor who you employ, or if you're fortunate, you have colleagues and friends who are also interested, who you interact with, and they provide you with, a lot of good assistance as well in your own thinking about what's going to happen.
Well, thank you, Dr. Doug Amish. He was our guest 2 weeks ago. And one thing I want to mention about Doug is that he's also one of our health heroes. And those of you who heard that program, you know how he changed his life and brought balance in his life. And in the meantime, hour has gone by, and a very interesting conversation. There is a recording of this conversation. So if you'd like to play this with your spouse or with your brother or with anyone, with your children, then just send me a note and I'll send you the link so you can play. Now, my friend Vibhay Sinha is very good in summarizing, and he sent you the summary of last program on empowerment. And today, Vibhay, I picked up a few things, and see if you have also picked up a few things. So I picked up the most important thing is to save. Almost all the speakers, there is an agreement on that we should encourage our children, grandchildren to save 10%, whatever they can. And if they are part of a 401k, then maximize that. That is the best investment one can get. Then we heard Ajit mention emphasis on cash flow. Make sure that your cash flow is good. Then we heard about Roth IRA. Then we heard about when should we get a financial planner and what kind of financial planner we need. And when, what are the kind of things we need to be aware of as we get into this market. There is one question which has not been answered. Anyone has read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Kameshwari has the question. If you have read that book, is it still relevant today? So before we wrap up, does anyone, have you read the book and is it relevant today? Anyone would like to take that question?
Repeat the name of the book, Dinesh.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, no, haven't heard of the book.
Rich Dad.
Dinesh, can I have 1 minute?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Please go ahead, Bal.
Okay. So let me, regarding the retirement and wife and all that.
I didn't
let
see
me
my
give
comments.
you-
What did they say?
Oh, hold on.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So let me give a quote, which is a paraphrasing. Warren Buffett, who is, I think, renowned as the world's best investor. He wrote a letter to his wife. I'm again paraphrasing. He said, after he passed away, he want her to put 2 years of cash in cash or cash equivalent accounts, and rest of the money must be invested in S&P 500, which are all blue chip companies and blue chip real estate and etc. And basically not worry about financial planners and all those things. And that was the advice from Warren Buffett to his wife. So whatever that is worth, I'm again paraphrasing. It's very close to what I'm saying.
Thank you
That's
so
all
much.
I got.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Vibhay, do you have anything you want to add? Did you get answer to your question?
No, I think you have summarized the gist of today's session. I have made some notes, and I think that very useful suggestions have come out. And I would like a recording of today's things to send to my kids.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And
I
Ajit,
will make a summary.
Ajit, would you like to give any last comment?
No, I think very educational for me as well. What I learned from here is my wife doesn't have to worry. It looks like it.
All right.
Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to share and learn from all of you.
And we would like, Annie and I would like to thank everyone for joining us. And I'm glad that Naren was able to join. And Som, I know you were up late last night, and thanks for joining us. So with that, we wish you all a very happy July 4th. And don't forget to join again on next Saturday at 9 a.m. We are going to discuss the purpose of our life. What should be our purpose? What is our purpose? And if we, and the purpose never remains same. You know, it changes with time and as we grow. And I think at any point in time, the purpose plays a very important role, and it can make a difference between your real happiness, the internal happiness that comes when you're aligned with your purpose. And people differentiate when you are able to fulfill your needs. You want to buy a car, you get a new Tesla. You know, that gives you pleasure, but it does not give you that happiness, the deep sense of happiness, which comes from when you're aligned with your soul purpose or your life's purpose. So those of you interested in that, tune in next Saturday at 9. And once again, thank you all. And thank you, Ajit, for sharing your wisdom. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Bye.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Anil and Bal, for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.